Israel is fighting to prevent a repeat of the October 7th massacre. Israel is fighting because we know that if we leave the jihadi regime called Hamas in power, a jihadi regime whose reason for existing is to wage forever war against Israel until we are all dead, the next war is a matter of time. And what Israel is doing here is saying, Hamas is refusing to release the hostages, it's refusing to surrender, so we're giving one last chance to Hamas to free the hostages, and if not, we're going all in order to bring down the Hamas regime. And the sooner Hamas comes down, the sooner we can move towards a day-after plan that will improve lives for everyone in this region.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says a new offensive in Gaza will be intense, with the population moved for its own protection. The country's security cabinet has approved a plan to seize the whole of the Strip and remain there indefinitely. Reports suggest the plan will only be implemented following Donald Trump's visit to the region next week. We're going to speak to a former Israeli government spokesperson in just a moment. But first, we've received this message from Ahmed Al-Najjar. He's a journalist and English teacher in southern Gaza. He gave us this reaction to today's news.
I'm not sure whether to feel terrified, threatened. Actually, many of the people here view it quite comical because apparently, according to these reports coming from the Israeli occupation's cabinet and their leaders, that we've always been here free and sovereign, enjoying our freedom in Gaza, and now they are punishing us by seizing and fully occupy the Gaza Strip. Well, sorry to break it to them, but we've always been under their illegal and criminal occupation, and now still enduring the worst chapters of their occupation, the genocide, enduring it with all its killing, displacement, and starvation. They say the Rafah city that they destroyed will become a safe humanitarian zone where all of us, all of Gazans, will be moved to. But any child who tried their safe zones here will tell you that it's a lie.
All right, well, let's speak to Eylon Levy, former Israeli government spokesperson and media advisor to the president, now head of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. Good evening to you, Eylon.
Hello, good evening, Kate.
Hello. I wonder for your response, first of all, to people like Ahmed Al-Najjar, we heard from there, who are, well, you know, terrified of what might happen next, the uncertainty of it all.
Yeah, war is terrifying, but it seems your previous guest is doing a very good job of covering for the Hamas regime. Let's remember the reason that Israel is at war with Hamas. Hamas invaded on October 7th, 2023. It invaded to perpetrate barbaric atrocities, to gun down Israelis at a music festival, burn families alive in their homes.
I don't think he has been defending Hamas. He's speaking to us as a Palestinian civilian, a Gazan civilian who is really concerned about where he goes next and what his role is within his own home place, really, if you're going to take control of it. And I have to point this out for fairness. There's no need for us to go down that particular road. That is a Gazan citizen just explaining to us how worried and upset they are about this, how uncertain it feels. He's not defending Hamas at all, but
well, of course, he's right.
Well, let's not cast that aspersion on him. Let's just talk about the facts of the story in front of us today, shall we?
Well, these are the facts of the story. He makes the outrageous allegation of genocide against Israel when this is a military campaign to bring down the terrorist regime that is threatening to repeat the October 7th massacre.
But just because he's mentioned genocide does not make him a Hamas supporter. I have to point that out for fairness. Otherwise, we are casting unfair aspersions there.
But he is mischaracterizing the nature of Israel's military campaign, and this is important, because Israel is fighting to prevent a repeat of the October 7th massacre. Israel is fighting because we know that if we leave the jihadi regime called Hamas in power, a jihadi regime whose reason for existing is to wage forever war against Israel until we are all dead, the next war is a matter of time. And what Israel is doing here is saying, Hamas is refusing to release the hostages, it's refusing to surrender, so we're giving one last chance to Hamas to free the hostages, and if not, we're going all in order to bring down the Hamas regime. And the sooner Hamas comes down, the sooner we can move towards a day-after plan that will improve lives for everyone in this region.
OK, so you're giving Hamas one last chance to free hostages. What is the deadline for that?
I understand from media reports that Israel is planning to wait with this offensive until after President Trump visits the region next week to give Hamas that one last chance to free the hostages. There are 24 hostages we believe are still alive, another 35 bodies of hostages who have already been murdered in captivity. Their families are worried sick, and Israel is hoping that military pressure will encourage Hamas to free the hostages for the sake of a ceasefire.
So what is your primary objective? Is it to eradicate Hamas, which goes back to your early intentions of this war, to eradicate Hamas, or to free hostages? Which one is at the top of the agenda here?
Well, Israel wants to do both. And the debate in Israel now is what is more important? Do you free the hostages of today, or do you stop more hostage taking tomorrow? Because the ransom that Hamas is demanding to give the hostages back is to release thousands of convicted terrorists who will reoffend and to remain in power to plot the next October 7th massacre. So the Israeli government is taking the position, we want the hostages back, but we can't pay the ransom that Hamas is demanding. And there is a very painful debate in Israel now about what price is too high to get the hostages out, given that Hamas is demanding in exchange the tools and the freedom to perpetrate more atrocities and take more hostages in future. No one has any good answers. Israel is caught in a horrible bind with only terrible dilemmas.
Look, the organisation that represents many of the families of hostages has accused the Israeli government of choosing territory over their family members, over the hostages. What is the response to that?
Yeah, I think they have a right to be concerned that certain members on the right flank of the government have spoken about a desire to permanently control and settle Gaza. But the fact remains that the Hamas regime is still there. And as long as the Hamas regime is in power, the families of the hostages who have been displaced for the last year and a half because they were chased out of villages that were burned down on October 7th, they can't go home. And Israel wants to bring down the Hamas regime so that Israelis displaced by the war can go back home. Now, some hostages' families want the government to pay any ransom, okay? They say pay any price, release however many terrorists, leave Hamas on its feet, we'll deal with them another day. And who can blame them for demanding that? But there are other hostages' families who are saying you can't negotiate with terrorists, you can't pay a ransom to terrorists. Britain doesn't pay a ransom to terrorist hostage takers either. The only way is to put military pressure on Hamas because that is the only language they understand. Yeah. And you know, the same deal remains on the table, which is the war can end today like it could have ended on October 8th if Hamas surrenders and releases those hostages instead of trying to traffic them for a ransom.
We know that essential humanitarian aid, including fuel, food, medicine, water, has been withheld from Gaza for more than 60 days. This is part of Israel's clampdown on Hamas militants. The Israeli government accused Hamas militants, and there's no doubt that there has been some interference. I think it's debatable on all sides. You will say something different. The people of Gaza will say something different as to how much Hamas militants are interrupting, are stealing goods intended for civilians. But to that point, Israel now says it wants to hire private companies to distribute aid. That has caused an incredible amount of concern from people like Ahmad al-Najjar, who simply do not trust companies hired by Israel, private companies hired by Israel, to distribute the food safely. Can you understand some of that concern? Is there a better way to do that?
I think if he is concerned with ending the war, he should be concerned with making sure that the Hamas regime cannot hijack aid in order to finance its war machine. This is what is happening at the moment. During the last ceasefire, Israel let in nearly 500,000 tons of aid into Gaza. It's enough food to last for months. But Hamas was hijacking it, stealing it, and then using it to finance its war machine. After Israel switched off supplies, the Wall Street Journal reported that Hamas is depleted, it's running low on cash, it can't pay its own fighters because shutting off the humanitarian aid has shut off Hamas's main pipeline. Anyone who wants aid to get to the people who need it need to back a mechanism that cuts Hamas out of the picture. And I think it is unconscionable.
How are those private companies going to succeed where the Israeli government has failed, where aid agencies have failed? There is an opportunity there for corruption, is there not? Private companies in charge of distributing humanitarian aid hired by Israel.
That's a legitimate concern, but no greater corruption than the existing system in which aid agencies have turned a blind eye to Hamas hijacking aid. It's unconscionable now, completely unconscionable, that aid agencies are demanding a mechanism in which Hamas is able to lay its hands on international supplies. British taxpayers are sending aid. Hamas is seizing it, using it to finance its war machine, and that is prolonging the war. So the question is, how do you cut Hamas out of the picture? So far, it hasn't been working, because once aid gets into Gaza, who's the government of Gaza? It's Hamas. Hamas has the guns. It's the regime in charge. It's able to take whatever it wants from the trucks and tax it, because that's what a government does. So Israel is suggesting, I just want to explain what the creative solution is. Israel is suggesting to set up humanitarian compounds in which Palestinians will be able to go and receive rations directly without Hamas being able to intercept supplies in the middle. Because for too long, a year and a half, the goodwill of the international community has been abused by Hamas to continue financing its war machine, and that has been prolonging this war unnecessarily.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, when the Israeli military were in Gaza, they were unable to prevent that from happening. How will it be any different for private companies? And I should just say that the UN has rejected Israel's plan. It's been approved by the Israeli cabinet today.
Yeah, and I think that's unconscionable.
Well,
I think that's unconscionable that they are demanding that Hamas have a role to play in the distribution of humanitarian aid.
They are not saying Hamas has a role to play. They are absolutely not saying. And we've had a great discussion today, Eylon Levy, but you're demeaning it by just making up stuff.
Perhaps I can clarify. Perhaps I can clarify that.
Well, okay, please do clarify or correct, because I'm just interested in facts here.
I will clarify. The existing mechanism is one that Hamas has used in order to finance its war machine by doing several things. By seizing supplies and diverting it to its own fighters, or by stealing it and selling it back on the black market for a profit.
But
the United Nations
that is not the United Nations' fault any more than it's the Israeli military's fault, is it? It is unfortunately one of those things happening which no one has been able to get a grip on so far, and to which you have now presented your own solution.
I wish this were a problem of just the United Nations not getting to deal with it. Unfortunately, these agencies have been willfully turning a blind eye to Hamas's seizure of international aid, and in the case of UNRWA, being actively complicit with Hamas. Israel has presented ample evidence of the UNRWA staff who are active Hamas militants who took part in October 7th.
And therefore UNRWA are unable to operate or enter Gaza. That is the penalty from Israel towards UNRWA there, that you've cut their hands off effectively, which, okay, has happened. There are other aid agencies working within the territory who are also having issues. They're not being directed by Hamas. They are having to deal with the complexities on the ground, as you well understand. Look, it has been great to speak to you. Thank you for putting the case across so well.
As always.
Eylon Levy, former Israeli government spokesperson and media advisor to the president.